I don't remember what the joke was, just the way she laughed. That quiet, low sound that didn't belong in a place like this. A cluttered repair shop with oil stains on the floor and a radio that wouldn't stop crackling between stations. Mira had come in because her car's air conditioner had stopped working. It was the kind of late summer heat that made tempers short and patience shorter. But she wasn't either of those things. She stood there, arms crossed lightly, head tilted as if even the heat had to make room for her composure. She wasn't really my stepmother. Not anymore. My father's second marriage had ended 3 years ago, but in some twist of timing, she'd stayed in town. I hadn't seen her since the divorce. I didn't expect to, not until today, when she walked in like she was stepping through the edge of an old memory. I was halfway under a car when I heard her voice. "Do you still pretend to know what you're doing, Ian?" I hit my head on the frame, rolled out, and there she was, her smile too calm to be an accident. I laughed, brushing grease off my hands with a rag that made things worse. "You still start conversations like you own the room." "I usually do," she said, looking around. "Except here, maybe." That was the first time it happened, that half-second pause. The kind that shouldn't mean anything, but does. Her eyes lingered on me a little too long, maybe out of surprise, maybe not. She had faint lines near her mouth now, the kind that come from years of holding back laughter, or maybe swallowing words. She still had that scent, something faintly like cedar and rain, the kind that used to cling to the books she left on my father's desk. I told her it would take about an hour to check the compressor. She said she'd wait. So she sat, not on the plastic chairs for customers, but on the low brick step near the open garage door, legs crossed neatly, phone untouched. Every now and then, she'd ask questions, not about the car, but about me. Whether I still wrote things, whether I'd ever left town, whether I still hated mornings. I answered like I was being interviewed for a life I'd almost forgotten. When I offered her a bottle of cold water, our fingers brushed. Nothing dramatic, just skin against skin. But it was enough for me to forget what I was about to say. "Still shy?" she teased softly. I grinned. "Still impossible." She smiled again, smaller this time, more careful. Then she looked away, toward the sunlight slipping through the half-open door. "You've grown up," she said, like she wasn't sure if she should have said it out loud. The shop was suddenly too quiet. The radio had gone to static, and the only sound was the soft hum of a fan somewhere behind me. I tightened a screw that didn't need tightening. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear that didn't need brushing. When I handed her the keys an hour later, she stood close enough that I could see the faint freckles at the base of her throat. "Thank you," she said, her voice low. "You've become steady." I laughed lightly. "And you still sound like you're grading me." She tilted her head, as if thinking about that. "Maybe I just missed the way you laughed." There it was, that strange warmth again. Not quite memory, not yet desire. Something in between. Something unspoken. As she drove away, I caught my reflection in the car's window, smiling for no reason, like an echo of a moment that hadn't fully happened. That night, I kept hearing her laugh. And every time I did, it stole something from me. Something small, but unmistakably mine. She showed up again 3 days later, just as the rain began. I was closing up early, the kind of gray, half-hearted drizzle that makes the sky feel closer than it should. The smell of wet asphalt drifted through the open shutter when I saw her car slow to a stop. Same silver sedan. Same quiet confidence stepping out, only now with her hair damp and curling slightly around her face. "The AC's fine," she said before I could ask. "But the wipers are making a strange noise." Her tone was casual, but her eyes didn't match it. She wasn't here for wipers. Still, I played along. "I'll take a look." She followed me under the awning. I noticed she wasn't wearing her usual heels, just flats, worn at the edges. There was something unguarded about that, as if she hadn't planned this visit at all. While I worked, she leaned against the counter, watching the rain fall outside. Her phone buzzed once. She looked at it, sighed, and set it face down. I pretended not to notice. After a while, she said quietly, "Do you ever feel like you're living the same week again and again?" The question hung there between us, too heavy for small talk. I tightened a bolt that didn't need it and shrugged. "Sometimes. But at least it rains differently each time." That got a small smile from her, faint, tired. The kind that makes you wonder how long it's been since someone made her laugh for real. Still trying to fix things that aren't broken? She said. Still pretending things aren't. I shot back before I could stop myself. She blinked. Not offended, just still. For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain filled the silence like static, soft but endless. She turned away, arms crossed loosely, her shoulders rising and falling as if she were fighting something invisible. I didn't come here for this, she said finally. I know. But she didn't leave. I handed her a rag so she could dry her hands. She'd been tracing the edge of the wet counter without realizing it. Her fingers brushed mine, again unplanned. Again too long. She looked down, then at me. You shouldn't look at me like that. I swallowed. How do I look at you? She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. Like you see through things I'm trying to forget. That should have been the end of it. She should have left. Instead, she stayed until the rain softened into mist. We talked about nothing, books, bad weather, why the radio never worked right. And when she finally turned to go, she said, You shouldn't wait for people like me to come back. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the words stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. She paused by her car, hand on the door, looking at me like she was memorizing something, or warning herself not to. Then she said softly, Still, it's good you did. And before I could answer, she was gone, leaving the faint scent of rain and regret in the air, and a question I couldn't stop replaying long after the sound of her engine disappeared. It started raining harder that week, like the sky had decided to rehearse every emotion it had never said aloud. She called one evening, asking if I could check her generator. The power at her house had gone out. Her voice was steady, casual, but there was something underneath, a pause that lasted a little too long before she said my name. When I got there, the living room was lit by a few candles. The air smelled faintly of burnt wax and chamomile. Mira was sitting on the floor, her laptop closed, her glasses folded beside her. She looked tired, not from the day, but from holding herself together. I thought you'd already be asleep, she said. I don't sleep much, I replied. She smiled faintly. You didn't before either. The generator sat quiet in the corner. I crouched beside it, pretending to study the switches just to have something to do with my hands. Her shadow moved across the wall behind me, slow and deliberate. You were writing again, weren't you? She asked. I looked over my shoulder. You still remember that. Writers don't stop writing, she said softly. They just stop letting people read. There was something about the way she said it, like she wasn't talking about writing at all. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was full, like the kind that builds before a truth someone isn't ready to speak. When I stood up, she was closer than I expected. Her face was lit unevenly by the candlelight, soft shadows along her cheekbones, the faintest line between her brows. You've changed, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. So have you. She laughed once, short, uncertain. I'm older. You make it sound like that's a flaw. Her eyes met mine then. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air between us felt thin, delicate, like one wrong word could make it shatter. And then her phone rang. The sound startled both of us. She turned away too quickly, the spell broken. It was her ex-husband. I knew his name from the way she said it. Quiet, polite, rehearsed. The tone people use when they don't want to reopen a wound. I'm fine, she told him. No, it's just the storm. Yes, I'll handle it. Her hand was trembling slightly as she ended the call. She saw me noticing and tucked the phone away, forcing a smile. Sorry. He still worries when the weather's bad. I wanted to say something. Anything, but every word I thought of felt too heavy for the moment. I stepped closer instead, handed her the cup of tea she'd made earlier but forgotten to drink. Our fingers brushed, and this time, neither of us moved away. Mira. She looked up, eyes meeting mine again. There it was, that same pull, the one we'd both been pretending not to feel. The candle flickered once, throwing a shadow across her face. She took a small step forward, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath. Then, as if catching herself mid-thought, she whispered, You should go before the roads flood. I hesitated, wanting to say something that would make her stay in that moment. But all I managed was, right. I'll. Check the generator again tomorrow. She nodded, eyes down. Tomorrow, then. When I walked out into the rain, I didn't even open my umbrella. The storm outside felt easier to stand in than the one I'd just left behind. She didn't call for a week after the storm. I told myself I didn't notice, that I was busy, that I wasn't checking my phone more than usual. But the truth was quieter and harder to deny. I missed the sound of her voice saying my name like it belonged somewhere safe. When she finally came to the shop, it was late. The sun had already folded into dusk, leaving the world tinted in that in-between color that never stays long enough. She didn't bring her car this time, just herself. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I nodded, wiping my hands on a rag that was already too dirty to help. Of course. She looked around like she didn't know where to stand, then finally leaned against the counter, the same spot she'd stood the first day she came back. "I shouldn't have called you that night," she said. "It wasn't fair. You didn't do anything wrong." "I did," she said quietly. "You came because you're kind. But I knew what I was doing." Her honesty caught me off guard. I'd imagined this moment 100 different ways, but not like this. Not with her voice shaking slightly, not with her eyes looking everywhere, but at me. "You make it sound like I didn't have a choice," I said. She finally looked at me then, and I saw it. That mix of guilt and longing, the kind that comes from fighting something you already know you've lost. "You don't," she said softly. "You're too young to understand what this could ruin." Her words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to be angry, but she wasn't wrong. I was younger. I hadn't learned yet that sometimes affection turns into consequence faster than you can catch it. I took a step closer. Not enough to touch, just enough for her perfume, faint and warm, to find me. "Then tell me," I said quietly. "What is this?" Her breath caught. "It's a mistake waiting to happen." "Then why do we keep finding each other?" That silenced her. For a moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the fluorescent light above filled the room with a thin, trembling sound. She pressed a hand to her temple, exhaled slowly. "Because we both forgot how to be lonely without making it mean something. That should have ended it. Clean, simple." But there was something in her voice that didn't sound like goodbye. It sounded like surrender. I said, "You could have just said you missed me." Her eyes softened, breaking for just a second. "And what would you have done with that?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how. The silence that followed was unbearable, not empty, but full of everything we couldn't say. She moved toward the door, stopped halfway, her hand hovering near the frame. Then, without turning around, she said, "You make it too easy to forget I'm supposed to know better." And just like that, she left me standing there, her words echoing in the hum of the lights, heavier than any touch could have been. It was late again when she showed up, not at the shop this time, but outside my apartment. I heard the knock just after midnight, soft but steady. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it. Then I opened the door, and there she was, coat damp from the night air, eyes darker than usual, holding something small in her hand. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "I figured that out around the third visit," I said gently. She smiled, but it wasn't a real one. It flickered and fell apart before it reached her eyes. "Can I come in?" The words came out as if she'd already regretted saying them. Still, I stepped aside. She didn't sit right away, just stood by the window, looking out at the half-empty streetlights. She placed the thing she was holding, an old photograph, on the table. It was of her and a young man, maybe 25. His hand was on her shoulder, both smiling, but not quite in sync. "His name was Rayhan," she said, her voice barely more than breath. "We were almost something." I waited. "He died in a car accident 12 years ago," she continued. "He used to laugh like you. Same kind of reckless sound. Like he didn't think the world could hurt him yet." She paused, tracing the edge of the photo with her thumb. "You remind me of him sometimes. The way you stand when you're pretending you don't care. The way you look at people like they're temporary but still matter." The room felt too small for her honesty. I didn't know what to do with the information, where to put it inside me so it wouldn't change everything. But it did. It changed the air, the distance, even the silence. "I didn't mean to," she said suddenly, looking up at me. "When I saw you that first day, I didn't realize what it was. I just felt something familiar. It's not fair to you." I stepped closer, unsure if I was angry, hurt, or just moved. You don't get to decide what's fair to me. Her breath caught, and for a moment, we were both just standing there, a half-second away from something irreversible. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She ignored it. I kept thinking if I stayed away long enough, it would fade, she whispered. But it doesn't. It just changes shape. The silence between us felt alive, fragile. I looked at the photograph again. The way the man's smile leaned into hers, unfinished. So that's what this is to you? I said softly. A ghost you're trying to remember through me. She shook her head slowly. No, not a ghost. Just the version of me that still believed in warmth. Her eyes glistened then, not with tears, but with that ache people get when they finally say something they shouldn't have kept quiet for so long. Before she turned to leave, she touched the edge of the photo again and said, "You don't know what you're saving me from." And then she was gone, leaving the photograph behind on my table, the candlelight catching its glossy surface. Two people frozen in a past I suddenly felt part of, even though I wasn't supposed to be. Days passed before she came back. I didn't call. Neither did she. But I could feel her absence like humidity in the air. Heavy, invisible, impossible to shake. The photograph stayed where she'd left it, on my table. I never turned it face down. I just avoided looking directly at it. Then one evening, the sky turned amber before the rain. That slow, golden morning before a storm. I found myself walking without thinking, feet carrying me to her street. Her house glowed faintly from inside, the curtains half drawn. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, but softer this time, like it wasn't a warning anymore. "Neither should you," I said. That made her smile, small, tired, but real. She stepped aside. The house smelled like mint tea and dust. A lamp flickered near the couch, half lit like it didn't know if it wanted to stay awake. She sat down first, and I followed, not too close, not too far. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence didn't need filling. It just needed existing. "Finally," she said, "I've spent so much of my life pretending I could control what I feel. And now?" I asked. "Now I'm realizing I never did," she said, turning her cup slowly in her hands. "Maybe that's why this scares me more than anything else." Her words trembled, but her posture didn't. There was still dignity in her fear. I found myself watching the way her thumb traced the rim of the mug, slow, measured, like she was drawing circles around something she couldn't say. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You don't have to name it." "I know," she said, "but not naming it doesn't make it disappear." The rain started again outside, soft, patient. It hit the windows like fingertips tapping for attention. She looked at me then, and something shifted, not sudden, not loud, just real. The kind of shift that feels like an inhale after holding your breath too long. "I can't promise you forever," she said quietly. "I don't even know if I believe in that anymore. But I don't want to keep pretending this isn't something." I nodded, throat too tight to trust words. She reached out then, hesitant, almost apologetic, and rested her hand over mine. Her skin was warm, slightly trembling. I didn't move, didn't squeeze, didn't pull away. It wasn't about possession. It was about recognition. The space between us softened, not erased, just acknowledged. "I don't know where this goes," I said finally. "Neither do I," she replied. Maybe that's the point. We sat there like that, two people who had finally stopped trying to fix what wasn't broken, stopped fighting the current that had already decided its path. Outside, the storm eased into quiet. Inside, her hand stayed where it was, unmoving but certain, like an answer neither of us had dared to ask for. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like something to break. It felt like something we'd earned. It's strange what time does to memory. The sharp edges fade first, the heat, the pulse, the dizzy rush of it all. What's left is softer, quieter. The way she stirred her tea before speaking. The sound of rain on her window. The silence that never felt empty. It's been almost a year since that night, the one where we stopped pretending. We didn't plan what came after. We didn't label it. We just lived. Sometimes I still see her. Not as often, not in the same way. She moved to another neighborhood, started teaching again. We meet for coffee when we can, at a small place tucked between a bookshop and a flower stall. The conversations are different now, lighter, but somehow deeper. Like we both know the words we don't say are the truest ones. She's not mine. She never really was. But I stopped needing her to be. I think that's what changed in me, the need. I used to think love meant wanting, reaching, claiming. With her, I learned it could mean noticing, respecting, letting. It could live in silence and still be alive. She once told me, "Not everything that breaks needs fixing." I didn't understand it then. Now I do. We broke. Not from anger, not from distance, but from understanding too much. That kind of break doesn't leave ruins. It leaves traces. Sometimes I'll be walking home, the sky turning gold, and I'll hear laughter from somewhere behind me. Soft, low, familiar. I'll turn around, half expecting her to be there. She never is. But the sound stays with me, like an echo of a lesson I didn't know I was learning. Mira taught me that love isn't always a story of getting. Sometimes it's just knowing. Knowing someone deeply enough that it changes how you see yourself. I used to chase meaning in everything, a reason, an answer, a finish line. But love, real love, doesn't end like that. It just shifts form. It lingers in small gestures, the way she still texts me when it rains, just to say, "It's one of those nights again." And I still reply the same way every time. Yeah, I know. Because I do. I'll probably always know. The memory of her isn't heavy anymore. It's quiet, like the hum of something that's finished but still alive in its own way. I don't stand outside her door anymore. I don't wait for her car to pass the shop. But every time I hear that faint echo of her laughter somewhere in my mind, I catch myself smiling. Just a little. Maybe that's what love becomes when it finally grows up. Not possession, not passion, but peace. And maybe, in some corner of her life, she smiles the same way when she thinks of me. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?